And it's time now for Business with Madison Reedy. Madison Super Fund has had its 5-yearly review. What does it say about how it's going?
Yeah, so every 5 years, in fact, the Treasury commissions an independent review of the guardians of the superannuation fund, the guardians being the managers of the super fund. Now, this time around, we had one this year. The last one was in 2014. Treasury hired the international firm Willis Towers Watson to do this review. Now, they found that the super fund's governance is exceptional. They found that its people and its investment strategies are excellent, and that's compared to other state-owned super funds around the world. Although the review did come up with a small handful of recommendations for our state-owned superannuation fund. Now, some of those, it told it to review its investment beliefs, values, and strategic principles.
What does that mean?
Who knows what that one means? Basically, it told it to align its beliefs with the same beliefs of its organisation and its board. So it just wants, I guess, consensus across the board when it comes to that one. One that is a little bit easier to understand, though, it did tell the super fund to review its compensation structure. That's what it pays its people, and not because the super fund pays too much, as we often see in a lot of companies around this country. It's actually because the super fund's pay is below average when it comes to international standards at super funds. Now, this review said that makes it difficult for the super fund to attract and retain good, talented staff, not to mention the fact that, we are in the small end of the world as well, so that also makes it trickier to bring global talented staff down here as well. Now, they told the super fund to suggest adding in other things to its employee value proposition, like talking up its culture and the purpose of the super fund to try and entice people to come and work for it. It interestingly also told it to bolster its resources in its responsible investment division. Now, the super fund does take this pretty seriously. It does have a head of responsible investment, and what they've actually done is they have actually, within this division, started to reduce and lessen their shareholdings in companies like oil production that incite climate change, and also things that are involved in things like modern slavery. Now, we should give you some figures here on the super fund as well. They did actually release their financial year annual figures this week. Their super fund is now worth $43 billion. Now, that's a growth of $3.7 billion just in the 12 months to June, which is an increase of just over 7% for 12 months. Now, that's pretty good considering that the super fund, in fact, on Christmas Day, had actually lost a few $billion in the first half of the financial year, and that was just because of market volatility. Global markets kind of came tumbling down just before Christmas last year, but they managed to make up those losses and some extra gains on top of that as well.
Now, this next one's got me interested. So an economist is suggesting some kind of controversial idea to reduce congestion in our cities. What is it?
Yeah, this one is quite controversial, especially to the Aucklanders who are probably stuck in traffic driving home as we speak. So the principal economist at the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research, commonly known as NZIER, his name's Chris Nixon. Now, he reckons the time is now for the government of this country to introduce a congestion charge. He says that is the most efficient and fair option to reduce congestion, not only in Auckland, but our main cities.
So what? Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch?
Christchurch. He also made mention of Tauranga as well, given that that's a budding city. It's almost like the second Auckland now, isn't it? Now, he says that this would work as a sort of toll on motorists who are driving on our busiest roads in particularly peak times, say before or after work. Now, he says that we do need something like this to incentivise motorists to stop using their cars and get on public transport and use things like their bikes instead at peak times. And especially if we want this country to be a carbon zero country in the future, as the government wishes.
Has he got a price tag for that, Maddie? How much does he think we should pay to be able to drive into town?
He doesn't have a price tag on that, and what he's told me is that he just thinks the government should actually just start looking into it, talking about it, and start throwing those ideas around. But regardless, he does say without a new pricing model, regardless of the price tag that is placed on it, regardless of this, he says that congestion will not reduce if we don't look to introduce something like this. At the moment, the road infrastructure, like building and maintenance, the money that we gather to fund those sorts of things, is mostly funded by fuel taxes. And that's not just the likes of the Auckland regional fuel taxes, but there's also a tax added to the price of petrol paid at the pump, and that is then forwarded on to pay for things like roading infrastructure. Now, Chris Nixon says that relying on mostly fuel taxes to fund these sorts of things is not sustainable, particularly as more people look to buy and use electric vehicles. He says at the moment people who are driving around in their Teslas aren't actually paying many, or in fact any fuel taxes at all. So they're really not paying towards any of our roading, our future infrastructure there. Now, within his research, he did look overseas, and he says that congestion charges have worked in places like London, Stockholm, Oslo in Norway, Milan in Italy, and also Singapore closer to home as well. But he does say that implementation of such a charge is key. So he says that the benefits of a congestion charge, as most economists would say, have to outweigh the costs. He also says that the public has to be in on this. The public must think that they are getting a good deal from such a charge. So he suggested things like lowering other taxes like road user charges, possibly getting rid of the regional fuel tax and lowering those fuel taxes. Also, obviously here, making public transport more convenient and frequent would be good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. Well, that one's going to fuel up a debate, isn't it? Excuse the pun.
It will do.
Also, you are aware of New Zealand is a bit tied up in a United States fraud case. What's this all about?
Yeah, I saved the most interesting one till last here, so we don't know all that much about this one, but what I can tell you is that the United States financial regulator, which is called the Securities and Exchange Commission, they came out not so long ago and said that they've linked New Zealand to a multi-million-dollar fraud. Now, within this kind of press release that they put out, they said that they've ordered emergency asset freezes on 3 companies and 3 of those companies' owners. Now, this relates to a fraud case that they've filed in the Colorado Federal District Court. Now, they're alleging that an investment company called Mediatrix Capital basically duped investors to invest money with them from false and misrepresentative statements that they made. Apparently, they allege that this company said that they had never had an unprofitable month based on the super technical algorithm that they used. They said that this algorithm had actually delivered returns of 1,600% since inception. Now, the SEC, which is this United States financial regulator, says that in truth, the scheme actually consistently lost money. In fact, to the tune of 18 million United States dollars in just 2018 alone. They're alleging that these guys operated a sort of Ponzi scheme and actually used about 35 million US dollars of investors' money to fund their lavish lifestyle, buying things like luxury property and cars. Now, at the bottom of the announcement, this is where New Zealand comes in. The SEC said that it appreciates the assistance of, wait for it, the New Zealand Financial Markets Authority. Now, I obviously went to the FMA in this country and said, what is this about? What have you been told about this? Now, they have told me that it receives requests for help and information from overseas regulators through what's called the International Organisation of Securities Commissions. But the details of this are typically confidential. But it did mention to me a company called Blue Isle Markets. Now, that is owned by one of the people that the SEC is pursuing. Now, the address of this company, Blue Isle Markets, is actually listed on the New Zealand Companies Register. And it's listed to the address of the ANZ Centre in central Auckland, in fact, just down the road from us. So that's all of the information I have on that. I have gone to the SEC as well. So,
watch this space.
So certainly watch this space.
Let's have a quick whip around. Just give us the dollar for us, Maddie, before you head off.
That's buying at 62.9 US cents, 92.6 to the Australian, and 50 British pence.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's Madison Reedy with our business update.